From Channel 9, Washington's #1 newscast, Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm J.C. Hayward.
And I'm Bob Altage. On this evening's Eyewitness News at 5, the amazing story of survival as an accident leaves a pilot hanging outside his plane over the Atlantic. Virginia police investigate a highway car fire as a possible case of attempted murder. And a key figure in the Iran-Contra scandal is withholding documents, claiming the Fifth Amendment.
But our top story at this hour is that FBI agents, D.C. and Montgomery County Police have raided 13 locations, made 8 arrests, and recovered thousands of dollars worth of stolen goods. This afternoon, federal agents and officers hit the Brookland liquor store at 12th and Hamlin Street Northeast. One man, identified police as Rufus Stank, was arrested and charged with trafficking in stolen goods. In the liquor store storeroom, police found washers, microwaves, dishwashers, and other appliances. Police believe the merchandise was stolen by a gang of burglars which had been operating in Montgomery County. D.C. Police Inspector Ed Spurlock said the raids yesterday and today are part of a continuing effort to destroy the market for stolen goods.
The violent death of an 11-year-old district youngster has put a 30-year-old Silver Spring man in jail on murder charges. D.C. police took Willie Baskerville into custody last night in connection with the slaying of Christopher Powell and the stabbing of the boy's mother. The child was found dead in his southeast Washington home yesterday afternoon after authorities got word that his mother had been hospitalized with stab wounds and expressed concern about her son. Neighbors say Baskerville had attacked his estranged girlfriend with a knife 6 weeks before.
The next thing I knew, she came back down the stairs, and he told he was going to kill her like that. And then she had walked on down the street. According to some neighbors, said that he had stabbed her in the head with a butcher knife.
D.C. police records show that Baskerville was arrested July 15th and charged with assault with a deadly weapon. But neighbors say he had continued to visit Powell and her son in recent weeks. She's reported to be in fair condition at Holy Cross Hospital in Silver Spring. Hospital officials say she has not yet been told of her son's death. Baskerville is being held on charges of murder and assault with intent to kill.
The pilot of an Eastern Express commuter plane can thank strong fingers for his life this evening. Last night, Harry Dempsey was checking the back of his plane for a rattling noise. The aircraft hit some turbulence. Dempsey hit the door in the plane's belly and flew out. The plane was thousands of feet above the Atlantic.
The pilot heard the door rattling. He went back to check it. When he tested it, it opened down, and he fell out. His feet were hooked on the door jamb. He was holding onto the rails, and he was 5 miles out. The co-pilot thought he fell in the water. He called, had him notify the Coast Guard, and he landed. And not until he got in here and shut down that he found out the pilot was still there.
Dempsey hung on to the open door's railing. Airline officials say Dempsey will take the next few days off. There are more troubles for Delta Airlines this evening. This time, federal aviation investigators report a Delta 757 narrowly missed hitting a single-engine Cessna over a Dallas, Texas suburb. They say the Delta plane was on approach to the Dallas-Fort Worth airport when it came within 300 feet vertically and 0 feet horizontally of hitting the Cessna. The Delta pilot was forced to take evasive action. A Delta spokeswoman says that the passengers were not aware of the near collision.
Virginia State Police are still trying to figure out exactly what happened to an Arlington man found critically burned alongside his flaming car. At this point, the best information troopers have is that someone set fire to 25-year-old Chantha Kang and his car on the ramp from Route 7 to I-66. Kang, who has burns over 80% of his body, has apparently communicated to family that a group of men attacked him after a traffic altercation. But state police caution that the investigation into the 3:30 a.m. incident is still wide open. Albert Hakim, the financier in the Iran-Contra affair, is refusing to turn over his records to the independent counsel. Hakim's lawyers claim he is a target of the investigation and therefore is protected by the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. He's the latest figure in the scandal to challenge the investigation. Walsh has subpoenaed the corporate records of several unidentified Swiss and other foreign companies. A 3-judge federal appeals panel here in Washington is considering Hakim's argument.
If you have bought any Carnation brand Bonbons ice cream nuggets or Fruit Scoops and juice nuggets, then you should take them back to the store. The company is recalling the desserts because of possible contamination. Now, so far, there have been no confirmed reports of illness from the products, but the Food and Drug Administration says that there are indications that several batches have been contaminated. For more information, you may call the Carnation office at Consumer Affairs. The telephone number is 800-521-4933. And also tonight, about 600,000 glass bottles of Cross and Blackwell seafood cocktail sauce are also being recalled. Nestle Foods says there's a defect in the bottle that could cause it to break when it is first opened. There is no problem, however, with the sauce. The bottles affected contain 7-digit codes on the cap that begin with 67077. And actually, that's G7077, G7078, or G7079. Now, if you would like more information, call 800-553-5303.
A 4-year-old Maryland girl is lucky to be alive this evening after being injured in an accident at the Maryland State Fair in Timonium. Investigators say she was riding on what's called the Music Express when she slipped under a safety bar, flew over 13 feet, and hit a sign. The ride travels backward at 15 revolutions per minute. But the little girl suffered only minor injuries. The accident has prompted the state to issue new height regulations for passengers on the ride and new orders prohibiting rides from going backwards.
Well, Beltway commuters near Cabin John found themselves crawling the Snail's Place for miles during the morning rush hour. There was no traffic accident. Maryland State Police were pulling over trucks carrying gasoline fuel, checking to see if anyone was illegally transporting it through Maryland. Police say the traffic tie-ups were not their fault. They blamed the motorists who kept stopping to see what was going on. Let's find out if anyone is stopping to see what's going on this afternoon. We're going to check the afternoon rush hour. Kim Leslie is at Metro Traffic Control.
Well, thank you, J.C. We do have a couple of slow spots this afternoon on the inner loop of the Beltway, not far from the Cabin John Bridge. Traffic is going to be slow, heading up towards 270. Had a car broken down on the roadway. Somebody came along and hit it. Now we've got an accident, so that's not helping matters at all. Southbound on the Shirley Highway, very slow traffic from Newington heading down to the Occoquan. Had an accident there much earlier in the rush hour. That has been cleared for quite some time. Wilson Bridge, not too bad this afternoon. Traffic heavy on the outer loop heading around from Route 1, and it looks like all the lanes are open. J.C.?
Thank you.
Still to come on Eyewitness News, the Iran-Iraq tanker war escalates just as another convoy of American protected ships heads into the Persian Gulf. We'll have the latest on that.
Also, Dr. Dean Adele will show us why there is a big change going on in the cosmetic surgery business. We'll be back.
The first deaths were reported today in this week's flare-up of the Persian Gulf tanker war between Iran and Iraq. The owners of a small Panamanian-registered supply vessel say 2 crewmen died Tuesday when the ship sank during an Iraqi attack. In Washington, the Pentagon confirmed that the 7th American protected convoy of Kuwaiti tankers today began its trip south through the Gulf. Alan Pizzi has more on the volatile situation.
3 U.S. flag tankers have left Kuwait on their way out of the Gulf. They should pass Iran's Farsi Island today. The convoy is heading into a troubled sea. 7 vessels have been hit by the Iranians in a round of reprisals for Iraqi attacks. Officials in Tehran said reprisals would continue blow by blow in a calculated way.
They're administering shocks and political messages through these attacks, and of course naturally causing a degree of disruption. But they cannot afford themselves to have the oil trade through the Gulf wholly stopped.
Among the victims was this Korean tanker, the Astro Pegasus, which was hit by a large shell. Most of the ships have been hit by rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns fired by Revolutionary Guards operating from fast speedboats. The Spanish tanker Munguia was hit a dozen times. Early today, a Japanese tanker was attacked, and there were reports that 2 crewmen were injured when a freighter was strafed off Bahrain. They were the first known casualties of the present round of attacks, although a supply boat is reported missing off the United Arab Emirates. The only safe ships right now appear to be those escorted by naval vessels. This tanker was being shadowed by a British warship and came through the dangerous Strait of Hormuz area in broad daylight. An Iranian Navy ship has been lurking near the entrance to the strait for several days. The Gulf sea lanes are still open and operating, but those using them now do so with caution and reluctance. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, in the Gulf.
Protesting aircraft workers today rushed the gates of Israel's foreign ministry. They were scattered by police firing tear gas. Authorities say 8 people were overcome by the gas and needed hospital treatment. The workers are angry at the government's decision to scrap the multi-billion-dollar Lavi jet fighter project. The Lavi's cancellation is expected to cost 2,000 aircraft workers their jobs.
Jordan's King Hussein flew to Egypt today for a meeting with President Hosni Mubarak. They talked for 3 hours and then Hussein flew home. Egyptian officials say the leaders discussed their concerns over the escalating conflict in the Persian Gulf. Both Jordan and Egypt have put their weight behind Iraq in its war against Iran. Once cosmetic surgery was only for the wealthy and usually only for women. Today, Dr. Dina Dell reports there's quite a change underway.
These days, it's not surprising to find a man's cosmetics counter at your local department store, complete with an array of products that used to be part of an exclusively woman's world. It's no secret that men have discovered vanity. What may surprise you is how far the trend has come. More and more, men are turning to cosmetic surgery, and with that change comes a warning to physicians. It turns out that men who want cosmetic surgery may be bringing a veritable workshop of unresolved psychological problems to the operating table. This is especially true of men who want nose jobs. A new study found 4 cases where doctors were actually killed by their patients who weren't satisfied with the results of their surgery. In all 4 cases, the patients were men. The study makes it clear that men may be expecting cosmetic surgery to do a lot more than change their face. They may actually be trying to change their lives, and that's something an eye lift or nose job can hardly be expected to do. The study recommends that cosmetic surgeons explore with their male patients why they want to change and what they expect to happen after surgery. And it's important for men who are considering cosmetic surgery to realize that a new nose won't necessarily mean a new life. I'm Dr. Dina Dell.
Massachusetts today lifted part of its ban against Maryland clams. 3 Rock Hall distributors were given the green light to start reshipping to the Bay State. 3 other Maryland distributors still may not. Massachusetts' embargo began in early August when health officials noticed high levels of bacteria in some Maryland clams. Massachusetts said the problem began in the Chesapeake. Maryland officials say it was caused by improper handling of the clams once they reached New England.
Coming up on Eyewitness News, thousands of people flee as wildfires tear across the Pacific Northwest. We'll have the latest.
And Ryan meets Rocky in Philly. Our travel reporter will have a report in just a moment.
The nightmare of wildfires continues today in the Pacific Northwest. National Guardsmen have been called out to help. More than 12,000 firefighters spread through Idaho, Oregon, and Northern California have been pushed past their limit to get a hold on the situation. Terry Drinkwater reports.
The town of Tuolumne, near the center of the rash of fires, was threatened again at dusk last night. Precautionary evacuations ordered. Meanwhile, gusts of wind blew away some of the smoke in parts of the Sierra, so there was enough visibility for bombers to drop their flame-retardant chemicals. That helped, but elsewhere the wind spread some of the fires. Some residents complied with instructions to leave their property and go to refugee centers to wait it out. Others, mostly ranchers, stayed on their property to fight the flames. Crews all over the threatened areas have gone from house to house and saved all but a very few homes. Joe Oliver was lucky, but his neighbors down the road lost everything. Yet in this rural community, already there is talk of the future.
Well, we're going to build you a new house. Oh, you're too good. Wow. You're too good.
Meanwhile, fire commanders assessed their prospects.
The good news is no new starts. The bad news is what we haven't contained has the potential to run to significant acreages.
Firefighters throughout the state agree there is a long battle ahead. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News in the Sierra.
it's still dry out there, too. And the thing that over the next 3 or 4 days is that more dry air, or the dry air is going to be reinforced by more dry air with no hope of any rain whatsoever or increase in humidity. I just want to clarify one point, that because of the Dr. Dean Adele report on just now, and Bob and I are going to be disappearing for a while starting, at least I'm starting tomorrow, he's starting over the weekend. It's not to have anything done to our noses. Our noses are perfect, we've been told, so don't get
Well, that's what my wife is reassuring.
That's right, yes, yes. Well, I have all kinds of people reassuring me. All right, another bright, sunny day around the Washington area. A few clouds every once in a while, and we can look forward to some sunshine for the next couple of days. However, the latter part of the weekend does not seem to be as optimistic as I originally thought yesterday. There are some indications it may fall apart beginning as early as Saturday night or early on Sunday morning. However, this evening's satellite picture for the northeastern states shows high pressure located over upstate New York, and that will continue to move through the New England states and into the Atlantic Ocean. As for clouds, all the clouds are now located well to the south of Washington and all the way down into the Carolinas, and those clouds are a result of moisture that continues to pour in from the Gulf of Mexico, but pleasant conditions prevail from our region back into the Ohio Valley, the Midwestern states, and the Great Lakes area. His area of concern, storm system now developing down the northeastern portions of the Gulf of Mexico, now shows signs of moving up the eastern seaboard over the weekend. It'll be a slow-moving storm. However, with all the moisture coming in off the Atlantic Ocean, as well as coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico, there will be an increase in clouds in Washington as early as Saturday afternoon or evening, and then the possibility of showers coming in as early as Sunday noontime. May hold off to the latter part of the day, but I think we should be prepared for some wet weather late Sunday and Monday. As for tonight, clear skies, sunshine tomorrow, and some sunshine on Saturday. I'll have the complete forecast a little bit later on. Chasey?
Thank you. Sylvester Stallone fans should have fun in Philadelphia. Tonight, our travel reporter Paul Ryan heads for the most famous steps in that city.
The statue of William Penn, founder of Philly, high atop City Hall. For the past century, he's been keeping an eye on all that he started here in 1682. Wrapped in scaffolding now, undergoing repairs, the statue should be back in business by mid-September, just in time for the big bicentennial festivities.
History. Last year we went up to Boston and Washington, D.C. and thoroughly enjoyed it. And with him going through school, we figured that once he started studying in school, if he could see these places firsthand, then he might have a better understanding of what actually went on.
Philadelphia was founded by William Penn. It's a city that then found its place in history with the help of Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. But a lot of tourists coming to Philadelphia today are looking to retrace not only the steps of those fellows, but also the steps of this fellow.
A few years back, actor Sylvester Stallone challenged the 99 steps leading up to Philadelphia's Museum of Art in the first Rocky movie. The phenomenal success of that movie has made the run a must for visitors of all ages, and that's followed by a trip to the sports complex in South Philly, where outside the Spectrum is the Rocky statue, and kids having their pictures taken next to one Philadelphian they can identify with. This is a great city for the younger visitor. History and museums like the Ben Franklin Institute, where kids run and touch and play with everything. Child admission is $3. Tomorrow, the flavor of Philly. In Philadelphia, this is Paul Ryan for Eyewitness News.
It was hard to find any English-speaking students around Shadyside Elementary School in Suitland, Maryland this morning. We'll have more on that when we come back.
Okay. Also, we have a warning for area cab drivers who speed through school zones, and a local hotel locks up its doors for good. We'll have that story in just a moment.
It was hard to find any English-speaking students around Shadyside Elementary School in Suitland this morning. A 20-member delegation from Siganshore, Senegal came to visit. The visit was part of the West African region's sister city relationship with Prince George's County. The delegation met with students in the French Foreign Language Immersion Program. Kindergartners and first graders speak only French while in that program. As part of the sister city relationship, the schools hope to exchange books, teachers, and maybe even one day, students.
We welcome them. Let's now check with Metro Traffic Control and find out where the tie-ups are. Here's Kim Leslie.
All right, JC, not a bad afternoon at the Wilson Bridge. Traffic slowing at Route 1 on the outer loop, and the inner loop is wide open getting into Alexandria. Southbound on the Shirley Highway, though, we do have very slow traffic from Newington to the Occoquan. All the lanes are open, had some earlier problems there. Northbound 270 traffic slowing on the inner loop heading up from the Cabin John Bridge. Had an earlier accident right at the base of the 270 spur. That is out of the roadway. Northbound on 270 proper, it is heavy up to Montrose Road and a brief delay up at Shady Grove, but it looks like all the lanes are clear there. Bob?
Are you looking for a great dessert with only a few calories? Our greengrocer, Joe Carcione, suggests slicing up a Satakoy.
So far this year, many different varieties of melons have come to market. And folks, I want to show you a new one that was introduced about 2 years ago. It's known as the Satakoy and is now being grown in Satakoy, California. The name comes from the Chumash Indian word meaning Sisters of the Moon. Well, I don't know what Sisters of the Moon has anything to do with the melon, but I want to tell you something, folks. Call it what you want. This Satakoy melon is an absolute beauty. Now, if you folks know the old New Yorker melon, this is something of a cousin, you might say. Of course, the New Yorker was a round melon. This is shaped more like a cantaloupe. And if you look at the skin is a very, very rough skin, and it's a thick skin, and it's a hard skin. But I want to tell you something, folks. When you cut this melon in half, you're going to get a surprise because the color of the flesh is absolutely... Look at the brilliant orange color of this flesh. And another thing, folks, even though this melon was hard, look at the maturity. The maturity goes all the way down to the rind. And I want to tell you another thing. It's got nice, smooth texture, and it is very, very sweet. Now, when you go to market, as far as these melons are concerned, you want to select them when they have a nice beige color. And also, folks, hard. You never want to select a melon that's soft, because the soft melon means that it's been bruised or it's been hanging around too long. You buy it when it's hard, the Satakoy melon. And folks, even though it's hard, if it has a beige color, it's ripe and ready to eat. This is Joe Carcione, your greengrocer, with your tip for the day.
Thank you, Joe. The Gramercy Hotel at 1616 Rhode Island Avenue Northwest has shut down for good. Several sources say the firm which managed the 10-story, 350-room building could not negotiate a new contract with the owners of the property. The hotel, which is in need of substantial renovation, first opened in 1963 on Scott Circle. The Gramercy's 100 workers were told it would close down early this week.
Still to come on Eyewitness News, AIDS, fact and fiction. Medical reporter Don Torrance looks at a surprising new survey regarding the disease, a survey taken on the University of Maryland campus. Hello again, I'm Bob Alter.
I'm J.C. Hayward. A Silver Spring man is under arrest tonight, accused of killing an 11-year-old boy and stabbing the youngster's mother. The suspect is 30-year-old Willie Baskerville. Police accused him of stabbing Christopher Powell to death at his home in southeast Washington. The boy was a sixth grader at Kimball Elementary School. The suspect is accused of stabbing 34-year-old Dorothy Powell also. She's being treated at Holy Cross Hospital. Police believe the stabbings occurred after a domestic argument.
FBI agents, D.C. and Montgomery County Police have raided 13 locations, made 8 arrests, and recovered thousands of dollars worth of stolen goods. This afternoon, federal agents and officers hit the Brookland liquor store at 12th and Hamlin Street Northeast. One man, identified by police as Rufus Stank, was arrested and charged with trafficking in stolen goods. In the liquor store's storeroom, police found washers, microwaves, dishwashers, and other appliances. Police believe the merchandise was stolen by a gang of burglars which had been operating in Montgomery County. D.C. Police Inspector Ed Spurlock said the raids yesterday and today are part of a continuing effort to destroy the market for stolen goods. Search teams working on their hands and knees returned today to the Oregon hillside where 6 badly decomposed corpses were found this week. While searching for more possible victims, they're also looking for clues that might connect the bodies to Washington State's Green River killer. 5 of the bodies found Monday and Tuesday have turned out to be young women. The 6th body was recovered yesterday. There's no word yet on that one. Oregon authorities say information from the search area about 40 miles southeast of Portland is being shared with investigators in Washington state.
A Loudoun County man accused of shooting his wife at a multi-million-dollar horse farm near Middleburg, Virginia, turned himself in to local police today. 55-year-old William Carter is charged with the malicious wounding of his wife, Carol. Police say he shot her in the head more than a month ago. Carter is being held on $250,000 bond. Authorities say they have been called to the horse farm many times because of domestic trouble.
At least 7 people were killed today and 100 others were injured in a streetcar accident in downtown Warsaw, Poland. It was the worst accident of its kind in the city since World War II. It happened when a streetcar on one of Warsaw's main avenues suddenly veered to the left, derailed, then rammed another streetcar head-on. One of the drivers is now undergoing blood tests to determine if he was drunk when the accident occurred. A 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew is in effect tonight in Meigs County, Tennessee, and the Sheriff's Department is conducting round-the-clock street patrols. The measures come after more than 200 people rioted in a Decatur, Tennessee courtroom when a defendant in a murder case was acquitted. The case had aroused emotions in the area, and spectators were stunned by the verdict. The sheriff's office says the mob overturned benches, threw chairs, and shattered windows. Some spectators even tried to attack the judge and jurors. At least 2 people were taken to the hospital. The suspect and the victim are members of 2 Tennessee families that have feuded for years.
Do as I say, not as I do, seems to be the attitude among students at the University of Maryland who responded to a survey about the danger they face from AIDS. The survey found the students know a lot about the disease, but they don't behave in ways that will protect them from infection. Don Torrance has that story and details of a new AIDS test in tonight's segment of AIDS, Facts and Fiction.
University of Maryland students, like most young people, tend to see themselves as invulnerable to disease. But paradoxically, they also see AIDS as a threat to the heterosexual community.
The question I have for you is, how do you assess your risk of getting AIDS? Very great or not at all great?
Not at all great. Well, I only see one person.
Well, I've been celibate for about 1.5 years, so not at all.
Not really great risk at all. I don't think so. I think if you're careful, there'd be no problem getting, it's scary. It's really scary.
You're dealing with trying to get people to change their behavior, particularly people who are at an age where they usually don't consider themselves vulnerable to disease or health threats.
Frymouth and Communications Department colleagues Tim Edgar and Sharon Hammond ordered their survey so answers would reflect attitudes and knowledge. 1,250 were mailed out, 458 returned. The knowledge respondents demonstrated about AIDS was surprisingly high. Though most identified AIDS as a threat to heterosexuals, most also thought their risk of infection to be low, even though they reported being sexually active heterosexuals. One conclusion the team is reaching is that education about AIDS is not enough. It isn't motivating changes in behavior like the practice of safe sex.
And we think it's a very important step, but it's not enough by itself, that you need to look at that second step, which is motivating them to behave with the information they have in mind.
And what can be done about that?
For one, try to introduce the topic into the classrooms as much as possible. Get students talking about the topic with each other. Just don't hand them a pamphlet and expect them to go home and sit by themselves and read that and then decide they're going to change their behavior.
Also from the AIDS front, researchers report in this week's Journal of the American Medical Association that a new test may detect AIDS virus infection before the body produces antibodies. The current test for AIDS exposure seeks those antibodies, which can take from 6 weeks to 6 months after infection to appear. This new test detects a protein fraction of the virus, an antigen, and may allow doctors to make a diagnosis sooner in the infection process.
What was unusual about the 6 patients that we saw with acute HIV infection is that they were all antigen positive at a time when they were all antibody negative.
The earlier diagnosis won't necessarily save the lives of those exposed to the virus, but may help screen out blood from infected donors who haven't yet developed antibodies. How valuable the test will be remains subject to further study.
Finally, the Centers for Disease Control have broadened their definition of AIDS, and the result will be more reported cases, perhaps 10 to 20% more. Now to be included as AIDS cases are those people infected with the virus who have lost 10% of their body weight, those who suffer from dementia, and those exposed children who have recurring bacterial infections. Since these people did not fit the old criteria of the syndrome, they had not been counted in the AIDS toll. Don Torrance, Eyewitness News.
Coming up, how are commuters doing with the rush hour traffic? We will check in with Metro Traffic Control.
And also Gordon Barnes has the Friday forecast with a look toward the weekend.